Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So I decided to make a footrest for underneath my desk and while I'm on my laptop on the sofa, and it just makes everything a bit more comfortable when you're sat at your desk and improves blood flow and things like that. So I decided to use some scrap wood. So here I've got some bed slats and an old piece of scaffold board. So I started off by measuring up and marking these slats, and all the measurements will be in the description box below for this. So I then marked up the piece of old scaffold board, and I then added an angle to it, and the lowest point was about 6mm, and then it went upwards to the end, which was about 10mm, and this will just make it a little bit more comfortable. So now it was time to cut all of these pieces of wood out on the miter saw. So I'm going to have on the top 4 slats, 4 bed slats, and then the 2 sides. So once I had all the pieces cut, it was time to cut out that sloping part on the 2 sides. So I decided to just clamp it to the desk. And I used a cordless jigsaw to cut along that line. The probably easier ways of doing this, probably should have used a saw, a hand saw, or even the table saw, but I chose the jigsaw, and it worked out okay in the end. So now to mimic the same angle on the other piece, I used the first piece as a template and drew a line, and then what I wanted to do on this one is to make sure it's exactly the same. I used the saw to make a guideline for the jigsaw. Right, so after that was finished, I just wanted to do a little dry fit, just to check the spacing and things of these slats. And because these are bed slats, they're very strong, so they're perfect for this application. And as you can see, all looks quite fine. So the next thing was to just mark out where I was going to put the screws. I then drilled some pilot holes, so there's going to be 2 screws on either side of each slat. I then used a countersink bit to countersink all those pilot holes. Okay, so now I wanted to give everything a good sanding down. Everything was relatively smooth already, so I went up to 120 grit sandpaper straight away. And I just made sure all those cut edges were sanded. And the same for the sides. So because the sides already had some grey paint on them, I decided to just paint them grey. And you'll see that in a moment. So I just gave them a dusting off with a dry brush. And I then used a grey fence stain to paint these. Mainly because it dries really quickly. I was going to use some gloss paint, but it takes quite a bit longer to dry. So in the end I used 3 coats of this. And for the top, for the slats, I used some boiled linseed oil, and I thought that would give a nice contrast with the grey. So after I'd worked it in with the brush, I then wiped off all the excess with a towel. So I decided to use some standard wood screws for this, and some like copper coloured ones. I thought that'd look nice. So now it was time to get those slats attached. Started off drilling and adding 1 screw in each corner of the top slat and the bottom slat to make sure that everything was square before I went ahead and added the other slats. So I'm piloting through into those side pieces here and then screwing down. So once it was all nice and square, I could then get on and add those central ones. So I did this by eye, I didn't use a spacer, and it was quite easy because there wasn't much of a gap anyway. I then just went ahead and hand tightened all the screws to make sure they're nice and tight, and so that I didn't split the wood. So that was the build complete, and it turned out really well. I think in the end I like the contrast of the grey and the wood, and it worked really well as well. So if you found this video useful, please like and also consider subscribing for more videos if you haven't already. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.